Yes, if law school wasn't enough to capture your fleeting attention, then I'm sure that launching a concert in the midst of it would. But unlike clickbaity material on this platform, it's true. On April 13th, I launched a concert in Sydney alongside a 27-piece orchestra whilst in law school, and while almost killing myself through a monster diet and a profusion of other things which I'll detail in this video. It went well, and although we made mistakes, I learned heaps of lessons which have proven invaluable moving forward. Now, before I get onto the next segment of this video, I understand that it's long and it's detailed, and I also understand that your attention span is virtually non-existent. So, you have my permission to skip to the parts that interest you, but understand that you're not getting the full picture. So, let's dive right in. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the channel. My name is Jad. I'm a violinist and a composer. I've been playing since I was 6. I'm a film director, I'm a designer, and I'm also a law student about to graduate. There are also a couple of things I am, but I'll save them for later. And through this channel, I'm documenting and conveying my interests in these areas, as well as personal development, in the hopes that more people realize 3 key things. First, the value of the multifaceted life. If you haven't watched my initial video, please do so to understand what that actually means. The second is the importance of unconventionality and individuality. Again, check the first video to understand. And if you notice that I'm looking down here, trust me, it's not because I'm scared of your appearance. It's because I have notes here and I want to ensure that I'm not missing points. And third, conveying these for you guys to understand through my own life. If you didn't check out my introductory video, then I want to reiterate that I'm categorizing my videos. This video is part of the multifaceted perspective category. And in keeping with what this channel stands for, this video aims to achieve the following. First, encourage you to maximize your potential through showing you how I endeavor to maximize mine and have maximized mine. 2, thereby fostering more unconventionality and individuality. And 3, in the hopes that you realize the value of becoming multifaceted. And in achieving this last point, I use what I term an unconventional word bank, which you should see either here or here, as well as legal-like communication styles. And this is an exercise for me in synergizing these multidimensional aspects of my life into something that can be of benefit to both myself and to you. It's December of 2022. I had just completed the Disaster X project, which was an important milestone in my creative journey and in my skill development journey, as well as I will mention later on, in the personal development journey of maximizing my potential. So in the moments of reflection and introspection that followed, I realized that I had to turn my mind to something bigger and greater, and that was bringing all our music live in a concert. But as it concerns the reason why, let me lay it out for you. First, because I'm of the opinion that beautiful music, insofar as it's created today, is becoming increasingly rare, and I want to change that. 2, because I, along with my father, wanted to challenge the common misconceptions and the stereotypes imbued within the Middle Eastern music landscape, particularly in our immediate surroundings. And if you don't know, the most common conception of it is usually along the lines of this. And we want to inform people who listen to our music that it isn't just Middle Eastern. It's universal music. It's a fusion of multiple genres, a multifaceted style, if you will, with a pure focus on unadulterated raw music. There are no vapid lyrics, no mindless vocals, just pure music. 3, we hadn't seen any artists conduct a project like ours to the same standard and to the same scale as we desired. So ultimately, as I beckoned to in my previous video, if that has been uploaded, albeit with reference to business, and paraphrasing Dan Coe, if you don't contribute to the space of music, someone else less skilled and less qualified will, and exert a greater influence than you. So in essence, it was a calling to challenge this and capitalize on our competitive advantage. But I had a problem. I didn't know how to launch a concert at 21. I'm still undertaking full-time study. I needed to assemble a team of musicians and videographers. I needed to gain significant exposure and sell tickets. And on a personal note, I needed to cut down after a long bulk. So the question became, how the hell was I going to manage all this? So let's get into that. So what was our concert to mean? Simply, what was it going to mean? Well, after many iterations and the wonderful feedback from my close friends and family, I decided that it would be considered a musical journey. A night where people left the theatre knowing we delivered three key things. The first, great music. Second, innovative musical ideas. And third, a show that kept captivating the audience. So to deliver great music, we knew we had to perform our most popular compositions. In the concert, this was The Disasters 8, X, One, Two, Three, and something that was special. But to ensure we were delivering something new and innovative, we had to rework them in such a way that it could be captivating and it could be engaging, as well as throw in some unanticipated surprises. So to deliver innovative ideas, we did end up rearranging our most popular compositions and reworking them. We also created some new material, and the outcome of that was that we delivered some awesome music. But there were also some that you're only allowed to see live. So when our next concert comes on, I don't care where you are. If you're in Antarctica, book a ticket, come to Sydney. Walk if you have to. It will be the best thing to happen in your life. Now, insofar as engaging the audience, this was where the specialty kicked in. We developed a space for my younger brother, whose rap name is Beast, to rap a custom set of lyrics that he developed for our first composition, The Disaster.
All these rappers have an image, but I keep my identity eventually, potentially, put their provided as energy, get the lights to flash, and the camera's on, the time is up, so let's continue with our legacy.
We also collaborated with Yarabo Karam, who performed a reimagined version of Ananda by Sabah, of which we reworked and reimagined in our signature Disaster style, and it was a really lovely collaboration, which performed very well, and the audience loved that. However, the most important part was to achieve all three. And to achieve all three, it required a few things. First, it required an amazing team. There is no other way it would have happened. I'm sure you've heard this and I'm sure you understand this, so let it serve as a reminder. This is coming from an individual who considers themselves, at times, most of the time, a lone wolf. This took effort. Also, it almost goes without saying, but I'd like to reiterate it, we needed to secure a venue with a great team. I mention that because we were very lucky that our lighting crew, particularly one lighting operator, could read music, and we had scores prepared. So when it came to rigging and preparing the lighting sequence that I designed, I had showed him the scores, which meant he could flick and flash lights on the beat, and he knew where the beats were because he could read the score. That in itself saved hours of programming. So that's the plan with respect to the musical side of the concert. But as I mentioned, I was still in law school, and so I needed to manage that. But I also mentioned one more other thing in the beginning of this video, that I almost died after conducting a monster diet. So, to achieve the aforementioned vision and plan that I had, I needed to plan how to achieve this whilst at uni, as well as achieving the goal of cutting down in weight before the concert. Fortunately, I had already experienced this sort of time management aspect when conducting the Disaster X project, as that was also conducted while I was at university. So that meant that I knew a thing or two about how to manage my time and achieve big things whilst having study commitments. In practice, I'm going to break it to you, this translated into me conducting most of the administrative work related to these projects whilst in class. I attended class, each one, in fact, to ensure that I would actually soak in the information, even if it were only 10%. Because what usually happens is that I gain familiarity, and gaining familiarity with terms, concepts, frameworks, legislation, provisions meant that I had these in the back of my mind and I wasn't led astray. However, the actual study occurred in the periods just around the assessment time. It worked for me before, and there were no reasons for me to expend mental energy devising a new system to achieve that. Now, understand something very carefully. I'm not recommending this. I'm merely detailing how I did it. And it worked. And what I mean by worked was I was studying a subject called corporate law, and I earned a distinction for that, as well as performed well in my other subjects too. And as regards cutting down in weight, I actually ended up hiring a personal trainer who's become a good friend of mine, mainly because I wanted someone to piece together a plan for me so that I didn't expend mental energy on doing that, even though I could. But I also wanted someone who was well versed in the areas of health and nutrition that I was, which I'll detail in another video perhaps. And it worked out fruitfully considering I got the result. Now, there were obviously some modifications that could have been made along the way, and indeed that could have contributed to more success, but I learned a lot of things that I will take with me moving forward in that. One of the things I wanted to mention was that I wanted change. And having that sense of change reinforced something really important that I think you're probably already aware of, which is nothing changes if nothing changes. So prior, I had been devising my own plans, so I outsourced that. Now we come to the execution stage. I want to preface by mentioning that the way that my entire execution was formulated was through a digital planner and is imported into the application GoodNotes on my iPad, which I have right in front of me. Now, I'll make a separate video exclusively dedicated to how I used that system and how it translated into my daily life. But I just want to mention that I've since transitioned into using a Notion template that I've created, given that I've incorporated some lifestyle changes which I really enjoy, and now that system accommodates me rather than me having to accommodate the system. Now, if you still want to know more about that information, I can link details to it below. If you want to purchase the templates that I've developed, they're also linked below. Now, when it comes to execution, I researched, emailed, and phoned practically every venue in Sydney to better ascertain their costs, their hiring costs, their seating capacity, their facilities, how they can accommodate our musical style, the like. Eventually, we moved with Concourse Theatre at Chatswood. They were incredibly professional, they were experienced, they assisted us with the process, they offered advice. But then also came the rehearsals.
1, 2, 3, 4.
So we did this at many different studios, rehearsal places, one of which was Trackdown Studios. However, when we did it there, it didn't run as smoothly as we'd liked. And that's the nature of things, and we understand that, and we acted accordingly. I noted down the areas which caused confusion. I asked individuals about where the confusion came from. I noted down these for the score, and I understood that there was a bit of awkwardness at the fact that commonality hadn't been established with all the musicians, so we had to foster that. But when it came to sourcing them, given my father's background and close connection to the musicians within the landscape of Sydney, it was no problem assembling the entire line of the Middle Eastern side. I then reached out to various string organizations and individual string musicians, informing them about the type of music we're performing, the dates we wanted them, and all of those related details. After assembling a team, I formed a WhatsApp group And while the individual members shuffled around, primarily due to being unable to commit, which is understandable, we did settle on our actual team, which ended up being an amazing team, obviously. But then it came to assembling the videography team. I contacted various videographers who all resonated with my style prior to finding Sonder Films. They're a fantastic team whose crew has worked with some great people, great brands, great companies. And so I met with the owner, Pav, and we conducted several meetings related to what I wanted. And what I also like to do is I like to format my meeting agenda such that we don't go in there wasting time about what we're trying to establish and what we're trying to decide on. I've been doing this since my uni projects, and I find it incredibly worthwhile to minimize encountering the scenario where group members come in, you speak, you say yeah a few times, someone says yes at something, and you end up hoping for the best. So we assembled the videography team, we assembled the musicians, we assembled an amazing venue team, and locked in the venue. And did I also mention that I did the admin work during class? Because I did. However, I did it intelligently. What I mean by this was working with others. For example, to mitigate the effects of not learning or missing content, I had a group chat with members of my table in class where we would exchange what we learnt in class through text messages, but also organize study meetings where we detailed what we've learnt as well as what we're struggling with, and we'd all attempt to help each other. Now, don't expect people to form this on their own. The second was that I also prepared answers to questions in tutorials ahead of time so that when I came in, I could contribute meaningfully, but also have a document that when reviewed later, I can refer back to and not feel as if I'm led astray with respect to the subject material. And then third, when it came time to study for the exams, I reviewed this class material and weekly questions I had answered, as well as the notes I've taken down from those group meetings. And this gave me enough of a foundation to understand the material, and I supplemented the gaps by revisiting the actual lecture material. And in this way, I learned the entire 12-week course in a matter of 2 weeks, effectively, efficiently, and I achieved great results in doing so. Now, life wouldn't be interesting without challenges. And in launching this project, there were many. However, I'm glad I encountered them. I thrive on them. For I think, as do many others, that it is through challenge that individuals grow. It's cliched, it's maybe trite, but it's nonetheless true. Overcoming challenges is where I find meaning is derived. It's where I find my limits, and most importantly, going back to the entire theme of this entire channel, is crucial, I repeat, it is crucial to maximizing your potential. You cannot even contemplate maximizing potential if you don't even attempt to overcome challenges. So, in detailing the challenges that I encountered, I'll deal with them in order of abstraction or generality. So the first one was energy. This is real wealth, in my opinion. And whilst dieting, the diet impeded my ability to function with vitality, to think clearly, to be creative, to take significant action, although I did. But it seemed as if I wasn't running at 100%, and that's the nature of caloric deprivation or caloric restriction. Funnily enough, it was also problematic in the sense that it was difficult to obtain a good mood, and that obviously impacted everyone around me. And that wasn't necessarily all the time, but it did occur, and it was worth noting. Funny story, I remember walking back home after conducting a meeting, I think, at Chatswood, and I remember walking back, and it's literally a 4-minute walk. However, I had to stop midway during that walk to pause, drop my bags, and wait because it felt as if I couldn't continue. I was so incredibly fatigued. I had perhaps been on, oh, this is going to sound dangerous. I had perhaps been on 4,000 kilojoules at the time, which looking back was absolutely wild, but it was required to get the result that I wanted in the time that I needed. So I had to pause, but then I picked myself up eventually, sludged through, and landed. So in future, I'd endeavor to structure such cutting phases as far away as possible from significant events, which people in the nutrition space will obviously advocate, but I do not do that. But that's okay, because I learnt and I still achieved a great result. 2, this is an important one to me. Lone wolf syndrome. I'm quite obsessed with ensuring things are done right, and the people who know me can perhaps resonate with that. However, I've come to realize that you can't do everything and expect everything to be done right. As such, I continually face the challenge of wanting to do a certain task exclusively or entirely by myself. However, having a reminder of this statement that you can't do everything and expect everything to be done right, as well as having a circle around me, whether that be close friends or family, to remind me of that was incredibly valuable, especially after looking back and realizing that individual efforts need to be focused collectively. Understanding that will be of great benefit to my future projects and my life in general. And obviously there were the more logistical ones, the more dramatic ones, the more I almost died ones. For instance, my violin broke. No, that's quite dramatic. My violin string broke 2 days before the concert, and luckily I took it to my local luthier to get that fixed. So I did that. And also my amazing photographer, who's a good friend, and who had taken the photos for practically every project of mine, including the rehearsals, couldn't make it on the concert day. And that's through no fault of his own. There was completely valid reason there, and there's no hard feelings whatsoever. But it still happened. So I had to source one on the day. And a big thank you to Pav for actually organizing this and arranging that, and to Ash for coming. But I'd like to mention something. I loved every single moment of it. I learned to dance in the bloody rain. In fact, here's a picture of me at 12 a.m. outside the theatre with which I performed at, standing in the bloody rain. Now, I'd like to flag, I was standing on the road when the green light to cross was activated, so I was not obstructing traffic whatsoever. Now, when it came to the actual concert day, this ran quite smoothly, thanks to an awesome team. I met my stage manager on the day. We ran through a run sheet. We liaised on the lighting plan. I met the crew, did a sound check with my father and our drummer before everyone else had arrived. And then we went to eat, reset, and got ready for the arrival of the teams, the musicians and the media. So I suited up, looked sharp, and prepared everyone around me for what was to come. And as well, I'd like to mention, we flew in our uncle from London, who's a percussionist, and it was a lovely experience because having his energy alongside us meant that we completed our familial team that much more. So then we returned, we reset, the audience arrived. It was go time. I don't remember much about the music process because I let the music overcome me. I functioned in that regard. I let the unconscious take control of me. So after the concert had finished, we bumped out of the venue at 12 a.m. and that's where you saw the lovely photo, and made it on our way. You should have seen the way that I slept that night. I had never... That is not true, actually. I retract that statement. It is only a few times in my life that I've slept with such a smile that stretched the corners of my lips with enthusiasm than on the concert day and on a few other days. So now that I've recounted those aspects of the concert and the processes involved, now we're going to transition into a section which I consider incredibly important. And that is the lessons learned and the advice. I also want to flag that when I detail these lessons, I'm going to be speaking in a fashion that is as if I was speaking to myself. The first lesson I learned, which I touched on earlier, was that you can't do everything yourself. As much as it's painful to relinquish control sometimes, it's best to accept this fruitfully. It is then equally as important to then cultivate a team of competent persons that can complement what you do. And as I mentioned, to focus individual efforts in a collective manner. 2. Sometimes going all in means going all in. You need to know what this entails. It means getting comfortable in the dirt. And to prepare yourself for this, it literally may just be you being one with nature, rummaging in the mud, immersing yourself in the trees, immersing yourself in the forest, surrounding yourself with salt water, emerging like the figure in Iron John from the swamp. Because at the end of the day, this is your goal. This is your ambition. And everyone who may have opinions stopping you from accomplishing what you want will be dead in 3 generations, as Chris Williamson had said. Importantly, you also need to communicate the fact that you're going all in with everyone around you. Doing so is important because it demonstrates that you care about your relationships enough to inform those people close to you and give them notice that, hey, I'm not going to be able to spend as much time with you, but it won't be permanent because this matters a lot to me and it's incredibly important for our journey together moving forward. 3. It becomes difficult pursuing more than about 3 things at once. In my instance, it was the concert, university, and the body transformation. Anything outside of these domains I did not attend to with the same level of intensity and with the same level of priority, as doing so would have detracted from achieving those 3, which were a priority. 4th, there is no perfect opportunity, or at least I find it useful to think this way. Think about this. How many times, and you're probably predicting what I'm going to say, have you encountered an opportunity that you missed because it didn't feel right, or because it wasn't the right time? If you added those things up, assess just how different your life would have been if you had taken them. And in my instance, it definitely wasn't the perfect time to conduct a concert and to launch one, considering that I was studying full-time. I was also conducting a regimented diet program, but that didn't stop us from achieving. You, by watching this on YouTube, most likely means that you use social media. This means that you've likely heard something to the effect of, no one really cares about your small mistakes. So do you think they remember? Sure. But then, assuming you improve, it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. It isn't something life-changing or life-altering 5 years from now. So, don't pay too much attention to that. 5th, the moment you identify an obstacle, understand that that is precisely when you know you are doing something worthwhile. The moment you encounter friction is when you know you're on track to creating a flame. It won't be worthwhile if it was smooth, silky, and easy. You would never have fire if you stopped at the slightest warmth. And as Rumi had once said, how will your mirror be polished if you are irritated by every rub? You know this, but it's a reminder, because oftentimes reminders are just as good as new information. So final thoughts. Yes, it's a lengthy video, get over it. But as much as I'm making this to provide value for you, I'm also doing this to improve myself. By bringing to conscious articulation my processes, I get to identify the things I can improve along with you all. So I hope you've learned something along the way. This is the beginning of a different YouTube journey for me, and it marks the first video of the multifaceted perspective. So in closing, I leave you with one statement: become who you are meant to be.